Hey, what's up guys, Matt here. The HTC One is one of my favorite Android phones of all time. It has an incredible build, a great screen, the software is pretty darn good, and it's just an overall joy to use. It's the one phone that I wish I still had with me to use every day. But there are some people out there, and I'm kind of one of them, who just don't like that big of a screen. And if that's you, then this HTC One Mini might be for you. Now this takes pretty much everything the HTC One does and just puts it into a mini form factor, and it works out pretty well. The design is pretty much exactly the same, although not quite as high-end. On the back you still get that great aluminum feel and durability, you have the plastic bands for cell connectivity, but you don't have things like the chamfered edges around the phone, so it's not quite as high-end as you would get on the normal HTC One, but still looks very similar. On the top of the phone, you have your lock button and the 3.5mm headphone jack. On the right side, you have your volume rockers. On the bottom, you have your micro USB ports. And on the left side, you have your SIM tray. Up front, you can see one of the best features from the normal HTC One, which is boom sound. These are the dual stereo speakers that are front-facing. On the HTC One Mini, the boom sound speakers sound just as good as I remember hearing, and they really have great dynamic range. There's some great bass there, and the stereo action really is noticeable. The only downside I noticed is that they aren't as loud as I was expecting them to be, but there's still plenty enough to hear. Now in between those speakers you have the 4.3-inch 720p HD display, which is not quite as good as the 1080p on the normal HTC One, but it still looks sharp. It has 341 pixels per inch. It looks pretty great, the colors are great, and it just is a nice screen overall. Now this HTC One Mini also carries over the same 4-megapixel ultra pixel camera, and this is a pretty decent camera. It takes great low light photos, but the only thing missing here is there's no image stabilization, so it can be a little bit more difficult to get the photos that you want. When you do capture a photo, the colors aren't the best, but they aren't anything worse than I've expected from the ultra pixel camera. And overall the camera is passable, nothing great, but it's not terrible either. Now powering this phone is a Snapdragon 400 dual-core processor at 1.4 GHz, 1 GB of RAM, 16 GB of internal storage, Bluetooth 4.0, LTE, pretty much everything you would expect, but the one thing that's missing here is NFC. I guess it just couldn't fit into the small package of this phone. It's not really a feature I personally use, but it would have been nice to see it in there. Overall, the phone ran pretty well. It definitely wasn't the fastest out there, and there was some noticeable lag, especially compared to the normal HTC One, but on everyday tasks it did its job pretty well, and it was definitely usable. Also inside there's an 1800 mAh battery, which was okay. I like to use my phones on full brightness, and I couldn't make it through the day. With most phones I can make it through pretty much my entire day, but with this one I just couldn't without turning down the brightness. But I did have every single thing turned on at all times, like GPS and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, but if you turn those things off and you're not using them, then you can definitely get some more battery life out of this phone. Now on the software side of things, it's running Android 4.2.2 Jelly Bean with HTC Sense 5 laid over it. HTC Sense is probably my favorite skin over Android, although of course I still prefer stock. The software didn't really get in the way, which is great, although I don't think it really added anything. You do get features like blink feed, but if you don't use those things, it's just kind of another skin that you get on Android, but it does work, and it does work pretty well. So overall, if you like the idea of the HTC One, but the thing that's holding you back is the size, I'd give the HTC One Mini a look. It's a great phone, like I said, it pretty much does everything the HTC One did great, just in a smaller form factor with not quite as good specs. But it's definitely worth a look if you're into this kind of form factor. So that's my review of the HTC One Mini. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure you guys give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more of my content, hit subscribe so you can see when it's uploaded. Like I said, I'm Matt, and I'll see you guys in my next one. See ya.